This episode is brought to you by Modal Electronics, who enable you to play and perform powerful sound with their incredible synthesizers. You can enjoy vibrant wavetable patches with the Argon 8 series, or you can produce with state-of-the-art analog-style synth textures with the Cobalt 8 series. To check out Modal Electronics' incredible array of synthesizers, go to modalelectronics.com. Modal Electronics. Dare to sound different.
The Wreckless Abandon album came about because I have a band called the Dirty Knobs. I've had them for many, many years. And we would play between Heartbreakers tours. And we became a little band. So when things opened up, as they did, I always planned to do this band. So we recorded the album relatively quickly. Some of them are old songs. Some of them are new. And we had it ready to go last year before shit hit the fan. And so we finally just put it out without a tour, and it's doing okay. I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant album. But so you start. When did you start the band?
Well, about 12 years ago, we've been getting together, and I didn't really start a band. We were hanging out and recording, and we went and played some gigs, and it kind of became a band.
And was the kind of decision to record an album and you know, go into the studio because you know you felt like for the first time it was possible, given the fact, you know, I guess Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, well, my time opened up, unfortunately, the way it did, but I always planned to do this at some point in the future, you know. Yeah. If the Heartbreakers had taken a break or whatever, but you know, things happened, and so it's something I always wanted to do, and now I'm doing it.
Yeah. And in terms of, you mentioned some of the songs were older songs and some were newer. Which were the ones that were sort of the oldest, and were they just things that you'd collected?
Yeah, well, I'm always writing, writing. And so let's see, a song called I Still Love You is an older song, maybe 7-8 years old. We played it live and always went down well. So we kept that on the record. Pistol Packin' Mama is a song we played live before. But like Wreckless Abandon and some other things, most of the album, I guess 2/3 of it is just songs that were written for the record.
And where did you cut the record?
In my home studio, which is a state-of-the-art studio. It's the same place that we've done a lot of Heartbreakers things. And it was very comfortable because we already had a sound up, and I wanted the band to just play live and sound like we sound without a bunch of overdubs, and so this is a perfect studio for it.
And so you guys, so who are the other members of the band, and how did you meet them initially?
I met them at sessions around town with my friends. Occasionally, I bumped into the guitar player first. His name is Jason Sine. We call him Ape, and we hit it off and played well together. And then later on, I hooked up with the drummer Matt Logg, who we call Swamp Fox, and the bass player Lance Morrison, who we call Crawdaddy. They call me Gator. And the rhythm section just showed up one day to goof around, and that was it. There was no hunt for a band. It just sort of organically happened.
And you guys, did you mention you'd been gigging before, kind of between tours? Where would you play in LA? Mainly.
Yeah, in LA at bars and little theaters and places, biker bars, and sometimes there'd be 4 people there, sometimes there'd be 300 people there. We just love to play. So, and it was a great place for me to woodshed new songs and see how the audience responded to them. And it was really just, you know, free. I didn't have to play the Heartbreakers hits. I could play whatever I wanted, and it turned into a good little band. Yeah,
I mean, definitely. That must have been. Did you ever? So you mentioned there were sometimes you know, like 4 people there or whatever. I mean, genuinely, did you sometimes play bars, and you know, would you occasionally play to quite an empty bar and then have someone go, wait a minute, you're Mike Campbell, what on earth is going on?
Yeah, that would happen sometimes. You know, we just wanted to go play, so I asked my roadie, you know, go find a place to play, and you know, these places had funny names like Blues Meets Rock or Cozies, or there's a place up in Santa Barbara that's actually a nicer place called Soho. that holds about 200-300 people. So we would just go play. Sometimes, when we first started out, there were a few places where it was like, 2 or 3 people, but then it grew up a little bit, and we have a nice little local following now. And I hope we don't have to play for 2 or 3 people ever again.
Well, it doesn't seem like you will, because you've got quite a big tour coming up, right?
We do. We had it ready to go before the pandemic hit. It was sold out back in February last year. And there's a few opening shows with Chris Stapleton and some bigger places like Wrigley Field. And then 5 or 6 of those type gigs where we open the show. And then behind that, we have our club theater show. That's all our audience. And it was all sold out and ready to go. So we keep pushing it back and pushing it back. Right now, it's looking like maybe the end of the year before we'll actually get back out there safely. Yeah. And we're just holding on,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I speak for many people that can't wait till you guys are able to tour and to see this live. Of course, Chris Stapleton collaborated with you on the record. He beat on Pistol Packing Mama. How did that happen? Did you already know Chris, or?
I did not know Chris. I met him for 30 seconds when the Heartbreakers played Wrigley Field, which is ironic. And he was opening, and he came out by and said hi. And I didn't know much about him, but I kept hearing his name, that he was really good. And then he called me up and said, would you like to, write some songs? And I don't normally do that because I usually write by myself. So, but I was open to it. So he came out to LA for 3 days, and we wrote some songs. A couple of them are on his album. And he came in one day and said, I've got a title for a song called F That Guy. And I don't know if we can use the word on this show or not.
You can, yeah.
Okay, so I said, well, have you written it yet? He said, no. I said, well, let me have a shot at it. So I spent about 5 minutes and threw together some silly stuff. And we cut the record in, twice. We played it twice. It was done real fast. And since he was in town, I said, well, I have a song that maybe you'd like to sing harmony on, which was Pistol Packin' Mama. And he said, sure. So I got him in the studio, and I said, since you're here, maybe you could sing the second verse. And he obliged, and it's really, really great. He did a great job. And we became great friends.
That's it's a great collaboration, and it will be.
Yeah, he's a great talent. He has a great voice, and he's coming from a very pure musical place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will be, interesting fate that you end up supporting him at Wrigley Field, back where you first.
Yeah. So now we'll go back and open for him.
So
that's cool.
In terms of now playing the Dirty Knobs, you've got you're playing smaller venues than you've been used to for so long. Do you enjoy that, or do you find yourself wanting to play bigger places, or do you not really care where you play? You play for the love of it?
Well, I love my favorite size place is about 200 to 400 people, because they're right up close and you're all in the same environment, and that's where the best music happens, I think. But I mean, I've played all size places. I've played huge places, and those are great too. It's just a different energy when the people are there's a lot of them when they're really farther away. You have to wave big.
Yeah. But
so maybe we'll get back up to playing some bigger places someday, but I'd be happy just to play theaters, and large bars. That's where the band is used to playing.
Yeah. And I mean, in a way, as you say, between 200 and 400 people, I mean, especially for rock and roll music, it's those tend to be the greatest venues. Now, I wanted to ask about, I mean, obviously there are so many things that you've been involved in your career that are incredibly interesting and iconic. But I wanted to ask, right before, the Heartbreakers or anything like that, what made you want to make music? What made you fall in love with music? What were your influences?
Well, it's very simple. It's my generation back in the 60s. It was the Beatles, Stones, Beach Boys, the Kinks, the Animals, all those great bands were on the radio. And I saw the Beatles on TV, and I just thought, I got to get a guitar. I want to figure out how to do that. That's a great job to have. And so eventually I got a cheap guitar. My mom got me a pawn shop $15 guitar that was basically unplayable. but I taught myself to play on that, and I just fell in love with it. Once I found the guitar, nothing else mattered to me. And then when I moved to Gainesville, I met Tom, and we were exactly the same. We had the same vision of what we wanted to do. It was a dream, and it really came true beyond our greatest expectations.
And when do you recall writing the first ever songs that you wrote? Because I mean, of course, you are, in my mind, one of the great kind of songwriters of the last.
What was the question again?
Do you recall when you first wrote a song?
Oh yeah, I started writing right away when I was learning guitar. As soon as I knew a few chords, I'd start making stuff up, just because you do that. And when I met Tom, he was writing more than me, actually. I wasn't that good with lyrics. I was pretty insecure about that. I'm not anymore. But part of playing guitar and learning how to play, solos and tastefully and this and that, is also just spending the time putting chords together and fabricating a song. That's kind of how I play. When I pick up the guitar, within the first minute or two, I'm already kind of trying to work out a song rather than just playing leads. And that's just where I come from. And so Tom and I hit it off right away.
Yeah. And when the Heartbreakers got together initially, did you start by playing kind of venues like you're playing, or you were playing in the early days with the Dirty Knobs? Is that
Yeah, we started playing out little dumps. Yeah, once the record was out, we kind of went out on tour and played some theaters. It started off, and it took a while for things to kick in. So actually, when we went to England and we did an opening show over there, that the press picked up on us, and that energy spilled back over to the States, and our record started to do a little better. But yeah, we started out small.
And in terms of the Heartbreakers, obviously Tom was the front man and the face of the band, but you guys were all so talented, and particularly it really seemed like you were crucial to the band. Was there ever any kind of were you guys ever kind of jealous of Tom getting the limelight and being the big star, or was there none of that?
Very, very little of that at the beginning, because we did start out, all for one and one for all back in Florida. But then Tom was becoming such a great leader, and he was writing so many songs and singing the songs. And we got our first record deal. And it became obvious that Tom was the leader of the band and the main songwriter and singer. So the decision seemed to make sense that it would be Tom Petty and something. It became the Heartbreakers. And, if he had been a weak leader or an asshole, there might have been some friction, but we were all so supportive and on this, happy to follow his lead. It was very harmonious, really.
It really seems like that. Obviously, you can never know just from following, musicians who you really admire. But it seemed like a very pure, peaceful band, doing.
Yeah. Well, if there had been any jealousy, we would have broken up. I mean, we were just, we loved each other. We loved playing together. You could call it, green cheese and the Bobos. We wouldn't care. We just wanted to play.
Yes. And so when you look back as well at, because when Tom did Full Moon Fever, you played a crucial part in that album, despite it not being a Heartbreakers album. Is that right?
That's right. I co-produced it and wrote some songs on it. Yeah.
And did you enjoy working with Jeff Lynne? Because Jeff Lynne also produced.
Oh yeah, that was a great time. It was so educational and so much fun working with him. And Tom and him had written Free Fallin' Free Fallin', and they wanted to record it at my house. So I became the engineer, co-producer, and that was the way the record went. And it was just fast. Jeff is so talented, and I learned so much from him. Really fun to work with.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the great records of
thank you
all time, to be honest, of all time. So and I wanted to ask about the way that you play guitar and how you learn, because of there are a lot of people who listen to this podcast who would like to follow in the footsteps of people like you. Did you ever learn to read music and do it that way, or did you play by ear?
Well, when I was in 6th grade, my parents got me an accordion, and I took a few accordion lessons where I learned a little bit of the basic formats of music. But I can't really read. I don't remember much about reading the music. When I got the guitar, I basically was just self-taught by ear, listening to records and stuff and learning off that.
And you know, before you met Tom and joined the Heartbreakers and started playing live, you know, when you were learning the guitar, did you practice like all the time? Were you already like
all the time? Yeah, till my fingers would bleed, literally. You know, of course, my mom got me this $15 Harmony acoustic guitar, and the strings were like that high off the neck. I didn't know any better. I thought, how do these guys do this? You know, and then I have to stop. Well, my fingers are starting to bleed. I better take a break. And then I went to a friend's house, and he had a Gibson, and I picked it up. I'm like, oh, this is so easy. So I kind of learned the hard way, but that was good for me. And I was just, it was with me, you know, that was such a beautiful time for a guitar player, because all the bands I mentioned, the Beatles, the Stones, the Beach Boys, the Kinks, the Animals, the Zombies, all those great bands, great guitar parts and sounds. And it wasn't about, you know, once Jimi Hendrix came along, it became otherworldly, you know. But before that, when I was starting out, it was song-oriented guitar parts, you know, like the Beatles. And I love that, you know, that the guitar plays supportive role. If there's a solo, it's quick and melodic and you get out of the way. And that's basically where I draw from, that type of playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like showing off and kind of like gratuitous. It serves the song, and that's what's so brilliant about it.
Yeah, if the song calls for it, like Running Down a Dream at the end, it called for some ripping. I can do it, but typically I just like to hear the song and not get in the way, you know, add to the song without taking attention away from the story. You know, that's just the way I think.
And when you've been involved, because obviously there's some incredibly iconic songs, Running Down a Dream being one of them. When you're in a studio making a record like that, and you know, because that's the song where you hear the riff for the first time. As a listener, I was certainly like, this is just absolutely great. When you're making a record like that, do you have the excitement when you know it's going to be a big one? Did you think that was going to be like a song you'd be playing every night?
I was excited because I loved it, but no, you never know. We never knew if certain songs are going to be a hit. In fact, the whole Full Fever album, which had several hits on it, when we first took it to the record company, they said, we don't really hear any hits. So we're like, what? We thought this was really good. So you never really know. You might think it, but if you do, you're fooling yourself. It's up to the timing and the public. And if the song connects with people, there's no magic wand for that. It's just mostly luck. But I'm excited when I'm making a record, not thinking that, oh, people are going to love this, but thinking this is really good. I'm really enjoying this, you know, I'm in the moment. And if it works out good, that's great.
Yeah, that certainly worked out well. Is there a record, like either a song or an album with the Heartbreakers that you feel didn't do as well as you wanted to, or that you love, like a deep cut?
Yeah, there's one song that's on Into the Great Wide Open, I think, and it's called All or Nothing. And it's got slide lead guitar all through the thing. I don't know how Tom figured out how to write lyrics to that guitar mess, and he did a great job. But when I hear that track now, it's got really interesting chords and great slide guitar and great words. And I don't think that song got its due.
Yeah, I'm going to need to re-listen to that.
Yeah, All or Nothing. It's a really good song, very Beatlesy.
Yeah. So was everybody in the Heartbreakers like very obsessed with the Beatles?
Yeah, they're the best band ever. Well, I mean, to our ears, that was you know, the Beatles was a huge cultural thing at the time. They changed everything. They changed the way people dressed, the way people listened to music, and they gave so much hope, you know, and redemption in their songs. It's all about love and things are going to get better. You know, it was a time in history where they had a place that connected with so many people in a positive way, including me.
Yeah, well, I mean, including it continues to this day. I mean, they're my favorite band of all time. I mean, they're still in the top, whatever. I don't know, top 5, top 10.
Well, that's how good they were. Yeah, that they were just, you know, it's interesting. They didn't really stay together that long when you look back on it.
Yeah. But
boy, did they create some really great music. And it was the chemistry of those 4 people. They were all individually good, but the Beatles was a force, you know, and they changed the world.
And
one thing that's really confusing about music now is the future. And obviously you're still making the music that you love and that I love and so many people do, but you hear it less on the radio, like the old way of doing it. Do you listen to newer styles of music that are more computer based, or do you find yourself always being drawn to a more organic sound?
Well, of course, I'm going to go to a more organic sound because that's what I personally like for my songs. But I hear stuff. I like a good song,
Yeah.
and if it's got a synthesizer or a drum beat, I don't care if the song is really good. I mean, I prefer organic music, but if a song is really good, it'll shine through whatever type of production you put on it, But there's a lot of new music that I have trouble grabbing onto. I listen to it, and maybe I like certain elements of a lot of the new music. And then when it's over, I'll tell a friend of mine, "Oh, I heard this song." They go, "Well, what was it?" And I go, "Oh, I don't know what the song. I've already forgotten it." Now with the Beatles, I heard or Stones back in the day, I heard their song one time, and I remembered it. It stuck. The melody was strong. It was simple. And somebody would ask me, "Well, I heard a song called 'She Loves You.'" I knew it. Nowadays, everything is so homogenized. It's hard for me to grab onto stuff. And I like to hear, I like to hear the lyrics. I don't like necessarily like just a drum beat for the sake of a boogaloo,
Yeah.
But I keep looking for new bands. There's a few rock bands out there. And I did hear the other day that from the Guitar Center that the guitar sales are over the top. Kids are still buying guitars. So I'm hopeful as time goes on, they'll start bands. And I don't think, and that rock and roll will ever die. It'll kind of maybe fade into its own little category. But I've been hearing this since day one. Rock and roll is over. Rock and roll over. And it's still here. If you like it, go find it. It's there.
So what have people been saying that for ages? Were people saying that in like the 80s and stuff?
Yeah, back in the 80s, like when all the video games came in, they go, "Oh, video games are going to take over the music industry. People are tired of guitars. They don't like guitars anymore." But the guitars always come back because they're the best.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. Of course, your point about the knowing a good song is very true, and some people may not know that one of the great things you've done in your career was co-write "The Boys of Summer" by Don Henley. I mean, a lot of people listening to this podcast probably do know that already, and apologies in advance for cherry picking things from your long career. But what was that experience like, and how come the song ended up with Don Henley?
Well, that's a good question. I'm always writing music, and that was a rare instance where I did write on a synthesizer. Dan, 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 dan. I came up with the idea. I was messing around in my studio, and I had a drum machine, and I cut this track, and I played it for Tom and Jimmy Iovine, and they kind of liked it, but I had a different chord in the middle, and they said, "Oh, that's kind of jazzy," and I said, "Yeah, you're right." So they left, and I went back and changed that part. And then Jimmy called me and said, "Don Henley's looking for a song." And I said, "Well, what kind of song?" And he goes, "An image maker." And so I sent him the tape. Or actually, no, I went over to his house with a cassette, and I sat there, and he just sat there like this listening. He didn't move. I thought he hated it. So I left. And then he called me and said, "I've written the best song I've written in 20 years. I said, "Really? Great. Let's go do it." And so it just kind of happened like that.
And was another song that you worked on with Henley, "The Heart of the Matter"?
Yeah, same story. I had the music, and basically exactly the way the music is, and he sang over it, came up with the words.
He did the words for both?
Yes. He did all the lyrics on the songs I wrote with him. I wasn't really into lyrics back then. I was just into music and writing, pieces of songs without lyrics, and leaving space for the writer to do what he wants.
And how did you change in terms of getting more into lyrics? Why do you reckon that happened?
Well, over time, I used to be really insecure about my voice because I was intimidated by Tom. He was always so good. I would really never sing much in front of him unless I was showing him an idea. But over time, I just kept collecting so many songs, and Tom could not write to all of them. Nobody could. So I figured, well, I'm going to try to write some of these and sing them myself in the studio just to see what they sound like. And I started enjoying that. And then I became more interested in lyrics and finding my own voice and stuff. And over time, that's where I am now. You know, I've got my own band and I can sing and write the songs, and I love writing lyrics now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense to do that. You mentioned earlier a song, All or Nothing from Into the Great Wide Open. Obviously, I should know the answer to this already, but did Jeff Lynne produce the whole of that record? Or was
Yes, he co-produced it with us. Yeah, me and Tom and Jeff produced that record, and that song once again was an instrumental that I had, and I had these chords, and Tom wrote these great words, and then we took. Actually, we used my demo. We took my tape and Jeff and Tom. Jeff came in and I think played the bass and helped with the vocals, and we finished it together. Yeah.
And when you recorded with Jeff and co-produced with Jeff, did you change the way that you worked? Because from what I know, is there a way of kind of like tracking the drums that he favors?
Yes.
Where he records?
Yeah, Jeff taught us. Yeah, up until we worked with Jeff, sometimes we'd use a drum machine, but we'd put real drums on it. But most of the time before Jeff, we would play live, you know, and get the whole band to try to get a performance. And Jeff didn't work that way. And it was really just me and Jeff and Tom in my little studio. And he had a system where he would build the track up one thing at a time. And he's just so good at it. It sounds like a band playing when he gets done. But yeah, there's kind of a formula to it, which I won't share because it's kind of his secret, but it always works.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you prefer, in general, recording live? I mean, that's the way you did the.
Yes, I prefer recording live, but I love also recording on my own, piecemeal. That's a lot of fun too. I mean, it's all good, but there's more fun when there's guys and there's energy and give and take. That's my favorite. But occasionally there's certain songs that you can't record that way and realize the song the best. It's realized best by, building it up piece by piece and making sure all the pieces fit. Certain songs work better that way.
Yeah. And you mentioned writing Boys of Summer on synthesizer, that, those initial chords. So when you're recording piecemeal, can you play a bit of everything? Can you play like a bit of drums, a bit of bass?
I can't play drums except for like 5 seconds without speeding up or slowing down. Boys of Summer was a drum machine. I had just gotten the first Lynn drum machine. And I was messing around with it one night, and I had a Oberheim, I think, and I was just making stuff up. And then I got the chord structure and I kind of liked it. And then I can play bass. I play bass on a lot of Heartbreakers records, actually. And although there wasn't much bass on that record, on the demo. Anyway, it was just synthesizers, and then I put a guitar on at the end. Da, 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 that kind of stuff. And just lucky, really. Sometimes you work on something all night and it sounds like crap. Other times you get lucky.
Yeah, you've written so many songs and been involved in so much. So do you, with the Dirty Knobs, do you think, because Wreckless Abandon's got such great reviews, and I first came across the band without knowing that you were involved or knowing any of the backstory. And I think it was played on Elton John's radio show on Apple Music. And I was just like, oh God, that record was pretty good. Who's that? And then it led me there.
That's really cool. You didn't even know it was me. That's great.
Yeah, because obviously I'm a huge fan of what you've done before this, but it just sounded really different and great. And so, do you think you'll make another album? Do you have plans?
Oh yeah. We were going to start a record like now, but then because we had June dates and we wanted to have a second record out. And now that's been pushed back, so there's no urgency. And also, we're not that comfortable getting together till the COVID thing calms down. But we've got lots of songs. We got, albums worth of songs. We're just going to keep making albums.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to listening to them. So I wanted to finish off by asking you, a lot of people look to, some of their rock and roll heroes for guidance as to how to get through this pandemic. So I was wondering, how have you spent the time? How does music continue to play a huge role in your life? Do you play and listen to music quite a lot, or have you found it difficult during this time?
Well, music is my life. It's my soul and the air I breathe. I have to have music. It's been hard not being able to play with my band and to not be able to play in front of people. But I've taken this time, like to do what I always do when I'm home. I would always come in the studio and write, record. Now I just have a lot of time to do that. But it does keep me sane, and it gives me a creative outlet. And, the rest of the time I just isolate. I have some dogs that I walk my dogs, and I have family and kids and stuff, and I see them occasionally when we can. And I'm just following the rules, trying not to get this thing. I'm getting my vaccination. I got one. I have a follow-up shot coming up. And the music, and I thank God I have a studio in my house, or I would probably be pulling my hair out, but I have an outlet for pent-up energy.
Yeah. Well, it's good. It's always good to hear, because some people, say since the whole, the pandemic started, they haven't been able to play, or they find music less enjoyable. So it's always better to hear that people kept.
No, I love music. I listen all the time and write all the time, and I don't see ever getting tired of that. Even if I never play another gig, I'll keep making music. I mean, I can't live without it.
Yeah, you do it for the love of it. And so I've only mentioned, Dirty Knobs, Heartbreakers, and Don Henley, but of course you've worked with all sorts of people. And so I just wanted to ask, from whether it's John Prine or, the Chicks or Stevie Nicks, is there a highlight from your work with other artists that you think maybe people don't know about?
Well, I don't know what people know or don't know, but there are many highlights. I mean, I really enjoyed working with Bob Dylan back in the 80s. We toured the world with Bob, and that was very inspiring, and I have great memories. I love working with Johnny Cash in the studio on those Rick Rubin recordings. That was really special. The John Prine song, Great Rain, was just a piece of music I had. I never even sat down with him. I gave the music to Howie, who was producing it, and he played it for John. The record came out, they just used my track. But I love John Prine, but I never got to hang out with him much. But yeah, I mean, Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison. I mean, what a fucking treat that was. There's nobody like him. That voice just killed me. Jeff Lynne, like you mentioned. George Harrison, I got to work a little bit with him.
What album with Roy, and so with Roy Orbison, was that the what's the title of the album?
Mystery Girl.
Mystery Girl, yeah.
Yeah, it was a Mystery Girl album, which was, a lot of it was recorded at my house because we were all hanging out.
Wow.
And Roy sang on Full Moon Fever on a couple of things, some harmonies, and I produced a couple of songs on Mystery Girl. Roy was just the sweetest soul ever. He was just such a gift. And of course, Del Shannon too, I worked with before he passed away. He was really good. I mean, I've just been blessed. I've worked with so many people that I admire.
If you're enjoying the Greatest Music of All Time podcast, you can keep up to date with all of our latest episodes for free by subscribing. If you're watching on YouTube, the subscribe button is located at the top of the Tom Cridland YouTube page. It's also at the bottom right of any video that you watch on YouTube. If you're listening on an audio platform, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe at the top of the page.